Oh, shoot. Welcome to the Dude Catholic Podcast. I'm your co-host Adrian here with three men. Hallelujah. It's raining men. Javier.
Guillermo.
And
degrade.
Degrade? Did you just degrade your name? I like it. It stays.
Huh?
It stays. If you recall from the last couple of episodes, it's staying. I'm not editing nothing today.
Oh no.
Mr. Dennis Grady has made his return, triumphantly returning to the Dude Catholic Podcast. And here for the first time, Mr. Guillermo, we are going to have a quick little conversation. It's casual conversation about stuff. The stuff about the things. It's what the podcast is about. A lot of people don't know. But the main thing is like we talk about the stuff about the things here. And the stuff that we're going to talk about is a couple of things. Now, Javier sent us this text message saying that we can discuss quite a few things. Now, we talked about fatherhood already. We talked about homosexuality already with the episode on pride. There's one on atheism that I'm kind of tempted to visit, but we have other things that we want to talk about. Too many things. So let's just get right to it.
Well, thank you, Adrian, for having me on once again. This time I'm virtually present for the first time. So what we have here is I'm going to focus more on just the recent motu proprio scoop of Pope Francis restricting Latin Mass. And I'll let Javier talk about the velvety stuff. So basically what we have here is Pope Francis tells the bishops of the world that they now have authority to determine Latin Mass being celebrated when and where throughout the world. And this is in conjunction with, really, you can say, Pope Benedict XVI's document that allowed the Latin Mass to be celebrated while he was still functioning as Pope. And now Pope Francis, either he adds to it or edits it, however you want to look at it, and basically says that now you have to celebrate the Novus Ordo, which is the ordinary form of the Mass that 99% of Catholics are all used to, that you see at most churches, basically saying that the Latin Mass communities need to incorporate that if they don't have it already. And so this really is going to cause an issue for those that simply or exclusively celebrate the Latin Mass, specifically religious orders. And I know several out there, they've been having issues with Pope Francis ever since he's been in office, more or less. And I don't know if I should go into detail about all that, but I do have a lot of inside information, and it's not pretty. It's not pretty at all. But at the end of the day, yeah. So at the end of the day, what we have here is there are going to be certain communities that are going to suffer from this because they're exclusively Latin Mass communities, Tridentine Mass, that is, and therefore it's going to. I think it's going to hinder their spirituality, but at the same time, I want to give a quick perspective on the matter. I personally see a positive view on this, and here it is.
Okay.
The positive view is that I think a lot of these communities have SSPX, Society of Saint Pius X.
Mm-hmm.
Right. A lot of them have like crossover or cross-pollination going on, where I know right here in the Buffalo Diocese, we have a lot of SSPXers that attend the Latin mass throughout the week, or sometimes on Sunday for whatever reason. And you can see it's causing a lot of friction, because they come with different theology, and they like to, basically spew that theology onto others. And if you don't accept it, you're basically excommunicated from their clique, and maybe I'm giving too much information for those that are listening from Buffalo here, if any, but I know some will be. But basically, there's a spirit of schism. We only have like
2 listeners, so it's cool.
Okay, sounds good. But there's a spirit of schism that comes with, schism being basically separation from the Holy Father, right? Separation from the head of the church, right? It's severing of the body, since the Pope is the vicar of Christ on earth. So what we see is that there's a lot of this spirit going on of schism, right, in these Latin Mass communities, simply because there's SSPXers, there's sedevacantists, which means that they don't think that there's a legitimate Pope, etc., right? And so I think Pope Francis is doing this to basically tell people, hey, listen, the Novus Ordo is legitimate Mass. You need to accept that. And in fact, we're going to make the priests do that as well. We're going to make the priests celebrate the Novus Ordo, simply to show that they're in unity with Rome, and unity with, the Holy Father. And so, and unity with Vatican II. So at the end of the day, I see a positive spin to it, that maybe he's trying to dismiss this spirit of schism. But I can go on more on that topic, but I'll let someone else chime in on the matter.
Yeah, I disagree with you, man. I don't see this I don't see any positive to whatsoever in this. I see it as a direct attack on conservative communities, backlashing for all the, I guess you could say, criticism that conservatives have had on Pope Francis and on less orthodox bishops. And I feel like now the bishops that have this power are going to definitely show forth that power, and they're going to regulate these communities. It's funny. I was just speaking to a friend that some of you are familiar with, Alex Angel, and he told me that he went to Congress. And he said that when he went to Congress, if you don't know what Congress is, it's huge catechetical, probably the largest catechetical conference in the world, actually.
Semi-heretical.
That's unfortunately because of that. And it's put on by the LA Diocese at the Anaheim Convention Center. He said he went to go hear a talk from Bishop Barron. And he was telling me that Bishop Barron, his talk was on how traditionalists are blacklisting and canceling Catholics, and he goes after traditionalists.
Oh, dude,
he went after. He could have talked about anything. Wow. Bishop Barron, he could have talked about anything, and he chose to talk about traditionalists and how they are basically, in a sense, not quoting him, but in a sense, almost like saying they're like cancer in the church. So wow. I think the lines have been drawn, shots have been fired, Dennis. And I think, make no mistake, my friend, I think it's just, and it's not only, I think we see it not only in terms of the ecclesiastically in the church. I think obviously politically as well. We see it obviously being here in America, big time. Democrats, Republicans, all that. I hate to bring politics into it, but all this is influential. We're all human beings that are, either living here in America or wherever you may live, that you have these views that cross over, not only in your religion, but also in your politics, in your worldview, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, make no mistake, I think that's what's happening. And I also wanted to point out that Pope Francis, this is also really sad before we move on to priests being suspended. Pope Francis has purposely, in my opinion, has elevated bishops to become cardinals who are of the ones that are more how can I say this? Liberal. Okay. And he has purposely, in my opinion, has avoided, appointing these archbishops that are more conservative, like Chaput never became a cardinal. Chaput should have became a cardinal. Are you kidding me? He was in Philadelphia, one of the largest metropolitans in the country. Archbishop Gomez, regardless of what you think about Archbishop Gomez, and that's very controversial, but he is yet to be elevated to a cardinal. And Los Angeles is the largest metropolitan in the country, for God's sake, right? Yet this pope has elevated more cardinals than any other pope. If you look at the statistics, I remember reading in a magazine, it was ridiculous. He has elevated twice as much as John Paul II. And if you don't think that's political, that is definitely political, because guess what? Who appoints the pope? Cardinals, right? So he's setting up for the future cardinals, or for the future pope, that when his demise may come, guess what? It's all good. I already appointed all these other cardinals to be in place to make sure they get the job done and perpetuate this direction that Pope Francis has begun.
So to me, this sounds like you're basing this off of a book called Infiltration, which goes deeper.
I've never read the book. I will never read the book. That man has offended me deeply when he attacked one of the greatest pope, if not the greatest pope of all time, John Paul II. So I do not affiliate me with that heretic.
The reason why I'm calling you out is simply because it's the same logic. So you're stopping at JP2 being a JP2 Catholic, but you're going with the same logic attacking Pope Francis, when really the same logic's been going back to John the 23rd, according to the book. So what I'm trying to get at is, I think it's a slippery slope to start doing that and saying that this is all political, because then you have to go deeper and be like, when did this begin? Did it begin with Francis all of a sudden, or was there a long-term thing going on? And I think that can lead to schism, which we don't want to do. I think at the end of the day, I think that you have some good points about what Francis is doing. But at the same time, I mean, our faith does teach that rash judgment is grave matter. So I don't want to go and have rash judgment on Pope Francis by saying that this is his intention in doing this. I want to say that I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that, hey, there's a spirit of schism going on in the church. And I think that he's trying to bring that spirit of schism really to the forefront and reveal those who are in the church and those who are out of the church, really, because like I said, with these Latin Mass communities, there's a lot of cross-pollination with schismatics that attend. And I personally have experienced that. And so I think that is a great recipe to prevent that. Like, are you in line with Vatican II or not? Basically, this will prevent you from maybe coming into the parish, becoming full-fledged with the parish. Maybe they'll flee back to their own schismatic communities, or they'll go elsewhere. Maybe they'll go to an Orthodox church or whatever it may be. I think that it's a recipe to basically say, hey, are you in line with Vatican II? Are you in line with the Novus Ordo? Because these are legitimate, and you have to agree that they're legitimate to be practicing Catholics. So
I'm sorry.
Let me interject.
Let me reply. That doesn't make any sense.
No,
it doesn't make any sense.
Wait.
Why don't we make this a separate topic sometime? Because this is one that I'm very passionate about, and I'd love to get into it. But
Go for it. Let me
just
respond to him real quick.
I just wanted to say wait. That's all.
Okay. I just want to say that doesn't make any sense. Okay.
I think it makes a little sense.
It doesn't make any sense. Let me tell you why it doesn't make any sense. Because how is it that empowering bishops that are now going to have full control, because obviously we know Pope Benedict the 16th gave that power back to individual priests, that if they want to celebrate the Latin Mass, the Tridentine Mass in their parish, regardless of what their ordinary says. And we know that here in LA, I don't know where you are, but in LA, we know that we had Cardinal Mahoney, and Cardinal Mahoney did not allow, he only allowed one Tridentine Mass to happen in the Archdiocese of Los Angeles per week. Okay. And people had to travel. You know how I know this? Because I used to be part of those people that would travel from one spectrum, one location to another very far location every week just to attend the Tridentine Mass. Okay. So now you put the power back in the bishop. Okay. I'm not anti-authority. I'm not, bishop shouldn't have any power. But now when you do that, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense that this is going to be good for the church and
So
for the Latin community.
quick
That doesn't make any
quick
sense.
reply.
It makes no sense.
Quick reply. It makes sense because the individual bishops have an awareness of what's going on in their own diocese and what's necessary.
What?
It makes sense because the individual bishops have an understanding and awareness of what's happening in their own diocese so as to react and give a pastoral resolution to the matter.
Okay, let me interject. Okay, Dennis, I do see where you're coming from. Well, the reason why is because I was speaking with a seminarian friend of mine here in the Archdiocese of LA, and he read the motu proprio, and he gave me a breakdown of what it says. He says that the motu proprio, it's addressing Pontificum Summarum, which made it clear that priests could celebrate the Latin Mass if they wanted to, of course, by Pope Benedict XVI. So what happened was that the point of this previous motu proprio, Summarum Pontificum, was to achieve unity, because you have, and let me back a little bit on some terminology that we've been using. We've been using the words conservative Catholic and liberal Catholic. I wanna push back and
I know those terms.
yeah, well, you know where I'm going with this, Dennis, because you and I, we've talked already. But there, instead of saying liberal Catholics and conservative Catholics,
I agree.
Instead of saying conservative Catholics and liberal Catholics, I say faithful Catholics and dissenting Catholics. So the dissenting Catholics are the ones who, yeah, I'm Catholic, but fill in the blank.
The Catholic butt,
or the cafeteria Catholics, if you will. Those are the dissenting Catholics. The faithful Catholics, I don't know if unfortunately is the right word, but it's an umbrella term for the Catholics who accept what the church says, but there's so much diversity within the faithful Catholics. Namely, you have the traditionalist Catholics, the ones who go to Latin Mass, and the rest of us. And even then, okay, we can go into more detail about the kinds of communities, but I would imagine they're a little more geographical than anything else, but that's a little besides the point. Point is, within the faithful Catholics, there's different camps. The point of Summarum Pontificum was to bring unity within all Catholics, really, but there was this group that was left out after the Latin Mass was restricted, if not suppressed. I'll let the fact check that. Back in the early 70s, during Pope Paul VI's pontificate, Pope Benedict XVI wanted to reach out to the traditionalist Catholics for the sake of unity among Catholics, period. Pope Francis is clarifying that did not happen. The reason why that did not happen was because the traditionalist Catholics, with all due respect, generally can be snotty. They look down on individuals who are not traditional Latin Mass Catholics. They do that. In my experience, what I will share in my experience, and to be fair, this didn't happen at traditional Latin Masses, but there's a parish here, I don't want to point out which one, in the Archdiocese of Los Angeles that celebrates the traditional Latin Mass. Now, this parish is surrounded by a sea of parishes where the majority of Catholics are dissenting, where if not the attendees of the Masses are dissenting, the priests themselves are dissenting. So this one parish celebrates the traditional Latin Mass. I've gone to this parish. And the people who attend this parish, they'll recognize an outsider when they see one. And I go, I'm not one of them. And they know instinctively, this guy is not from here. They've looked me up and down in a disturbing way, clearly I'm not a traditional Latin Mass Catholic because I'm not one of them. And there aren't too many other neighboring parishes that celebrate the traditional Latin Mass. So they could safely assume I was not all that traditional. And I do want to specify the differences between the word tradition and conservative. I do think there's a huge difference between the two. But again, I'd rather say faithful Catholic than dissenting Catholic. Pope Francis's intention with this, to build off what you're saying, Dennis, the intention is, hey, we tried this and it didn't work. It caused even more division. Therefore, we're going to leave it up to the bishops to restrict the Latin Mass. And it's up to the bishops. And here's the thing. Just reading some of the headlines, it made it sound like it was a total ban on the Latin Mass. That is not true. That is inaccurate. It's up to the bishops. I do want to clarify that. But this is going to cause more division than there already is. And I'll leave it at that. I'll let
me chime in a little
Dennis,
bit.
Really quickly. Is there bishops? Hold on one second. I want to ask you a question,
Guillermo,
Dennis. I want to ask you a question. Is there bishops that are dissenting?
Are there bishops dissenting in the church?
Yes. Like, especially in Germany.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. So according to you, this is what you said. The bishop should have the provision to make this decision. Now, you're saying that a bishop that is dissenting should have the provision to make such decisions, not only on this matter, but as we know in Germany, in the matter of gay marriage, in the matter of the Eucharist. Okay? So according to you, authority is absolute and it should be thrown back in the hands of a bishop. That's what you're saying. That's
Javier,
your line of reasoning.
But Javier, can we stay on?
No. This is good.
Let me reply first to
First of all,
Guillermo.
Dennis wanted to respond to me, and
All right,
I
go
let
ahead.
you ask him
Hey,
a question.
you can
but
respond to me
went on.
after. Go ahead. You go ahead and go back to Memo, and then you come back to me, buddy.
Yeah, I'll respond to you later. But I'll go to the bigger target first. So the bigger target is Guillermo. I actually respect what you said about that. I agree with you. I don't think I once mentioned conservative or liberal Catholicism on the podcast yet, because I know better not to do that. But what I agree with is your terminology. But also I wanted to chime in and say that I think that there is another terminology that may be more suitable. And this is coming from a priest friend of mine, a very good one at that, who celebrates both Tridentine and Novus Ordo. He said that he thinks that there's only what's called rigid Catholics or not. And so what he means by that is this, that he's, as a priest, he's noticed that there's rigid Catholics in the Tridentine community, and there's also rigid Catholics in the Novus Ordo community. What does he mean by that? Basically, he means that they're rigid to the point of they're not open, right, to anything outside of their perspective. And that includes quote unquote, like you said, liberal Catholics or even dissenting Catholics, right? They're also rigid. They're also rigid. Why? Because he said that they don't want him using Latin at all, even in the Novus Ordo. Like, they don't want him doing certain reverent postures, right? Having reverent posture or reverent bows or again, Latin language at all or chants at all during the Novus Ordo. And while if they're so liberal, quote unquote, they're open-minded, right? Why are they closed off to that? And so likewise, you go to the Tridentine, they're also closed off in the other direction. So you have those two camps, right? They're both rigid camps. And therefore, what we have people that are, basically I don't want to judge their soul, but I'm saying it seems like they have a hard heart in the sense that they are rock solid on their perspective, right? And if you go against it, you're going against like dogma almost, right? When really it's not the case. Now, responding to Javier very quickly, yes, there are dissenting bishops. What I was suggesting, Javier, is that Pope Francis has good intentions. His good intentions are he's trying to resolve this problem of schism that's happening in the church. Now, going back to Guillermo, I think that he has a good point that it may cause even more division and even more schism, because then these Catholics that are, again, against the Novus Ordo, against Vatican II, they're not going to want anything to do with it, and they're going to maybe go off to the SSPX. But that's the point. Maybe Pope Francis is trying to weed those people out instead of trying to, hey, I want everyone to come in and just, I just want people to be Catholic or be in the church. No, actually, I want good Catholics in the church. I don't want just Catholics that are Catholic by name only, or even by attendance only, but they're actually Catholic in their thought, heart, practice, right? And therefore, hey, if you're going to leave the church because of this, then you probably weren't Catholic to begin with. You have a spirit of schism.
Yeah, I hate to admit how beautifully you worded it, because people there's this idolatry for the Latin rite. It is an idolatry. Like if it's not in the Latin, if it's not the Tridentine Mass, then it's not really the Mass, or it's valid but illicit or invalid or what have you. So no, Dennis, I do see where you're coming from, but I don't know Pope Francis's intentions. In my opinion, this is very imprudent. It's just not.
This whole podcast is imprudent, so you're safe.
Yeah, Dennis. Yeah. If I were to keep going, I'd go off topic. So that's that.
So just to bring it back real quick, because I haven't heard my voice in a while, and we know that's a problem in the podcast if I don't hear my own
Big
voice.
problem.
So yeah, huge. So basically what I'm hearing is first and foremost, we've never had this kind of disagreement in the podcast. Ramon and I think if we ever, and that's just the relationship of our brotherhood and friendship. If we ever start talking like that, we're gonna start duking it out. But we were talking about Arian and Santa Claus, punching Arian in the face.
Yeah.
So it's really in the last episode, if I'm recalling correctly, So one thing that happened right
Hopefully
now,
not Adrian.
and it was hilarious. But another thing that happened is we were talking about this whole. It's really geeky, by the way. It's really nerdy what we're talking about right now. Let's just flat out say it. It is.
Is it?
It is. I mean,
how
you guys are theologians. I'm just a rinky-dinky, knuckle-dragging Catholic dude. Who's trying to live the faith, struggling every day. But
I guess. All right.
But we are talking about things that most people don't really engage with, theologically speaking, or just like in a regular conversation. So just to bring it down to the regular guy level, Pope Francis said that basically priests have the ability to restrict the Roman Missal of 1962 in masses, and that would be the Latin Mass, right? Once again, speaking regular terms. I'm not using the big fancy Latin words. So that's going on, and then we're kind of talking about motivations. Now, I haven't been a big fan of Pope Francis' decisions, just because just from a knuckle dragger's perspective, it seems to go away from church teaching. When he praises Father James Martin and says nothing about Father Altman, who was dismissed basically because he dared to speak the truth. There's a problem there. It's not like he's not paying attention to what people say. When people like Bishop Barron feel attacked by people like the guy who wrote the book Infiltration. I'm blanking out on his name. I think about Jonathan Taylor Thomas all the time. But yeah, Taylor Marshall. Taylor Marshall. But yeah, he felt attacked by him. And you know what? And at the end of the day, here's the thing. I read the book. Okay, I actually read the book. I wrestled with it. I checked the facts, and I'm like, yeah, he attacked my boy JP too. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, it didn't seem right the way he went after him. So there's a lot of crazy stuff in there. But the thing is he wrong? Yeah. And so when I checked certain facts, I'm like, all right, he's not wrong here. He's kind of wrong here, or he's taking it too far here.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, at the end of the day, whether you like the guy, whether you like the people in the who go to the Latin Mass of that particular parish, like, are they right? Are they wrong? Am I right? Am I wrong? Sometimes I'm prideful and I want to do things my way. Scratch that. Every day I'm prideful and I want to do things my way because let's just face it, most of the times I'm right. But when it comes down to truth, I'm willing to be corrected. And that's why I surround myself with people who are smarter than me, aka also known as you guys. I want to sit down. I want to listen. Sometimes I want to shut up and just soak up what you guys are talking about, because it's just awesome because I didn't go to Franciscan, as we talked about in another podcast. You know, it was too expensive for my blood. But I do geek out on theology books, and I do read the stuff that I'm not supposed to read if I want to be considered faithful, you know. And there's stuff that I'm kind of like, you know what? Let's just read it. Let's listen to this. Is this person an idiot? Is he not? Are they wrong? Are they right? And so at the end of the day, I think all of you guys make some really good valid points. Like maybe an unintended fruit, intended or unintended, we can give them the benefit of the doubt. I've been giving Pope Francis the benefit of the doubt for too long, and I've seen too many bad things happen. Yeah. You know, too many bad leadership decisions coming out of that office. And you can talk about who was standing behind him when he came out to greet the people for the very first time. You can talk about his relationship with Cardinal McCarrick. You can talk about his relationship with all these abusive people. And you can also talk about how welcoming he's been to a lot of Catholics who felt ostracized from the religion because they weren't Catholic enough. Right. So we can talk about all these things. At the end of the day, is this a good decision? Is this a bad decision? We're going to find out, because time is going to tell. And whether or not that's an unintended consequence or an intended consequence that all the faithful Catholics are going to show, there is one thing that we are going to see for sure, is that the people who are in power who don't like the Latin Mass are going to restrict it. And maybe I'm just, I don't know, maybe I'm too loud. Maybe I need to shut up. But at the same time, I think all you guys something's out.
So I'd like to chime in just very quickly, and I'd say that for one, I am not the person that endorses everything Pope Francis has said or done. As a faithful Catholic myself, I believe to be and aim to be, but I definitely want to keep that spirit of holy obedience, a spirit of reverence towards the Holy Father as being the Holy Father. I believe he's a legitimate Pope. I believe that he has legitimate authority, jurisdiction, but at the same time, I do believe that there is something fishy going on, and I definitely smell that, if you will, or taste it, however you want to put that. But it's definitely something fishy going on, and I think that people need to be aware of that. I'm just saying on this topic, I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, but at the same time, I see the perspectives that you're giving me, and I recognize things that may have been erroneously said or done in the past.
That's an interesting place to leave it. I think that's a nice little bow. You know what? Just because I happen to be the host of the podcast, I want to give Memo Guillermo the last word on this one. If you want to just kind of close it off with some thoughts, you know, just kind of. Okay, so what's that?
Let me see. I lost my train of thought, but just building off of, okay, there's these restrictions on the Latin Mass. I saw this meme recently of a bishop pointing to a priest to go over a cliff. And the meme says obedience has its limits. That there is truth to that. Of course, there is truth to that. But we could easily argue, we could easily go back and forth about, well, who is it that we're supposed to obey? You know, there's this back and forth that will come from that. Well, should we have obeyed our Bishop Marcel Lefebvre when he said, oh, hey, yeah, let's go? No, we should have disobeyed him, those of us who were his followers or what have you. But their argument is, no, he did the right thing by ordaining the priests against the Pope's orders. Now, that's a different topic. But the reason why I bring up this meme is because this is something that it doesn't call for disobedience. This is something that calls for obedience. Just because, as we can see, it's not a full ban on the Mass. And even if it were, here's the thing. Here's this assumption that we all got back in the early 70s when the Novus Ordo first came about. And the Latin Mass was not celebrated, to the best of my knowledge, at all. Unless someone attended SSPX masses. The Latin Mass was gone for this from the early 70s all the way up until, what was it, 2007 with Pope Benedict the 16th motu proprio. Did the world end in 1970 because the Latin Mass was gone? No. Is it going to end now that it's restricted?
Hell no.
No, it's not going to. It's not going to. And look, after the Latin Mass was gone in the early 70s, did faithful Catholics disappear? No. No, that's why we're having this conversation, the four of us right here, because we believe what the church says. And we're quote unquote Novus Ordo Catholics. No, we're faithful Catholics.
I just want to give two things. The first thing is that if you are a Latin Mass attendee, like I was, and I have been, write to your bishop, right? Especially now that this has happened. Right, very practical advice. Write to your bishop. Let him know that you do not want the Latin Mass restricted in your parish, in your diocese. In other words, show their support for the Tridentine Mass in your diocese, in your archdiocese. The second thing I want to say is kind of in conjunction with what Memo was saying. We are Catholic. We are faithful Catholic in our alliance and our fidelity, first and foremost, to Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And but therefore, and they're also to His bride, the Church, and the teachings of the Church. The teachings of the Church. Study your catechism. Study the Church's documents, councils, and remain obedient to the Church's teachings, regardless of what you may hear in your parish, or coming from your local bishop, or God forbid, coming from your current Pope. You know the Church's teachings, you remain faithful to Jesus Christ through the Church, and all will be well.
And pray for us as we pray for you. Ferrum ferro aquitur. All right. See, I thought you were gonna like start like poking at stuff. Right
No, I
now.
wanted to
I'm
start
like,
going
this
back
guy.
at Dennis because he's a liberal, but
Did you?